Do you have any idea who that is? The woman in pearls grabbed my wrist so hard I almost dropped my drink. I turned around. Excuse me? That man, the one you just signed to. She was staring across the ballroom like I'd just touched a live wire. I looked back at it. The man sitting alone at the edge of the gala, ignored by every single person in that room. I'd noticed him 20 minutes earlier, watched 3 different men laugh at something near him, clearly about him while he sat there with a drink he wasn't touching. Nobody had said a single word to him all night. So I walked over. I don't know why. Maybe because I know what it feels like to be invisible in a room full of people. I signed, "Hello, I'm Ellie." His head snapped up like he hadn't expected anyone in that entire building to know sign language. His eyes went wide. Then something in his face just broke open. Relief, shock, like I'd handed him something nobody had given him in years. He signed back, hands quick and warm. "Nobody here talks to me. You're the first person tonight who has." We'd been signing back and forth for almost 10 minutes. Easy, funny, real. When Pearl's lady yanked me aside. "I'm sorry," I said. "Who is he?" She lowered her voice like she was telling me a secret that could get her fired. "That's Daniel Cross." I blinked. "Okay, Cross, as in Cross Logistics." She said it slow like I was supposed to gasp. "His family owns half the shipping contracts on the East Coast. He's worth more than everyone in this room combined, and his own family treats him like he's an inconvenience." I looked back at Daniel. He was watching me now, waiting to see if I'd disappear, like everyone always did the second they learned who he was. I didn't move. That's when I noticed her, an older woman in a deep green dress standing near the bar, not laughing, not mingling, just watching us, watching me. Her eyes weren't warm, they weren't curious, they were calculating. I didn't know it yet, but that was the exact moment Margaret Cross decided what she was going to do with me. 3 days later, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. "Ellie, this is Margaret Cross, Daniel's mother." Her voice was warm, syrupy almost. "I'd love to take you to lunch, just us girls." I should have asked how she got my number. I didn't. The restaurant was the kind where the menu doesn't list prices. Margaret ordered for both of us without asking. "You made quite an impression on my son," she said, folding her hands. "Do you know sign language professionally, or was that just a party trick?" "My uncle was deaf. I grew up signing with him." "How useful." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Daniel is a good man. Difficult, of course. He can be stubborn, moody, hard to reach. Most women find it exhausting trying to communicate with him. Frankly, most women want more than he can give them." "He seemed easy to talk to," I said. Margaret's smile flickered, just for a second. "Well, you're patient, plain, sensible. That's rare these days." I didn't know if that was an insult or a compliment. I still don't. "He'd like to see you again," she said. "I told him I'd ask on his behalf." "He can ask me himself." Something shifted in her face. Annoyance quickly smoothed over. "Of course." Daniel called that night. Well, texted, then video called so we could sign. His hands were nervous, hesitant, nothing like the confident business air Margaret described. "Would you have dinner with me?" "Just us, no family." "I'd like that," I signed back. Dinner was easy. He laughed with his whole face. He asked about my life, my job, my terrible apartment heater. Actual questions, actually listening to the answers through my hands. Halfway through dessert, his brother showed up uninvited. "Bradley Cross." He shook my hand too long, smiled too wide. "So, you're the interpreter girl." "Ellie," I said. Right. He glanced at Daniel, then back at me, something sliding behind his eyes. "You know, our family's been waiting for someone like you. Someone uncomplicated." Daniel's hands moved sharply. "Leave, Bradley." Bradley just laughed and walked off like he'd won something. I didn't understand it then. I thought it was just an awkward brother being an awkward brother. I had no idea that 2 rooms away, in Margaret's private office, Patricia was taking notes while Margaret said the words that would shape the next 3 years of my life. "She's perfect. No money, no family, no lawyer." A pause. Easy to remove later. 6 weeks. That's how long it took from that dinner to an engagement ring. I told Daniel it felt fast. He signed back, dead serious. My mother doesn't do slow. If she likes something, she moves before it can change its mind. I should have heard that as a warning. I heard it as flattery. The wedding planning moved like a freight train. Venue booked before I'd even picked a dress. Guest list finalized without my input. Margaret handling every vendor call personally. She's just excited, Daniel signed one night, though his face didn't look convinced either. What I noticed more, though, was the business side. Daniel co-owned Cross Logistics, and his name was on the paperwork, on the building, on the letterhead. But in 3 months of dating him, I never once saw him in an actual meeting. Don't you go into the office? Yeah, I asked. I used to. Now they say meetings run faster without an interpreter slowing things down. Who told you that? My mother. Bradley handles operations now. I filed that away. I didn't like it, but I told myself it wasn't my business yet. The wedding itself was small. 60 people, mostly cross-family friends who watched the ceremony like they were at a funeral instead of a celebration. Margaret cried, but her eyes stayed fixed on me the entire time, not on her son. Vivian, Daniel's aunt, cornered me near the coat check afterward. She was the only Cross who'd hugged me like she meant it. "Watch the paperwork," she said quietly, gripping my arm. "Watch everything they put in front of him to sign." "What do you mean?" She glanced over her shoulder before answering. "I mean exactly what I said, sweetheart. Watch it." She walked away before I could ask more. That night, moving my boxes into Daniel's study to make room for my books, I found a locked drawer. It wasn't hidden well, just underneath old tax files. I found the key taped to the underside of the desk because Daniel had once shown me where he kept his spare house key using the same trick. Inside was a single folder. The label read, "Interpreter Reports. Do not share with D." I sat there holding it for a long time before I opened it. The folder had 6 months of typed reports, meeting summaries, contract notes, all written by someone named Grace Doyle, company interpreter, Cross Logistics. I didn't understand why it mattered until I compared one report to a meeting Daniel had actually described to me afterward. His version, I told them I didn't approve the Baltimore route. Too risky, bad margins. Grace's official report. Mr. Cross expressed general approval of the Baltimore expansion, deferring details to Bradley Cross. They weren't just different, they were opposite. I brought it to Daniel that night, signing slow so I wouldn't miss anything in his reaction. "Who is Grace?" His face went tight. "Company interpreter. Been with us for years. Why?" I handed him the folder. Watched him read his own meetings. Translated wrong over and over. His hand started shaking before he even got to the 4th page. "She's been doing this the whole time?" "I think so." "Why would she?" He stopped. I watched the realization land on his face like a slow, sick weight. Bradley pays her. The next board meeting, I came with him. Grace was already seated at the table, surprised to see me. "I'm his wife," I said, sitting beside Daniel. "I'll be interpreting today." Grace glanced at Bradley. Bradley's jaw tightened, but he smiled anyway. "Of course. The more the merrier." For the first time in years, Daniel's actual words hit that boardroom. He raised concerns about vendor contracts, asked pointed questions about a shipping deal with margins that didn't add up. The room went quiet in a way it clearly wasn't used to. Afterward, in the hallway, I heard Bradley's voice through a half-closed office door. "She's ruining everything." Low. Furious. "He can't have a voice now, Mom. Not now." Margaret's voice, calmer, colder. "Then we remove the voice." I stood frozen outside that door, my hand still holding Daniel's arm, translating nothing, saying nothing, because for the first time I understood. This had never been about protecting Daniel. It had been about silencing him. That weekend, going through more of Daniel's business files to understand what I'd walked into, I found a signed shipping contract. Daniel's signature at the bottom, dated 3 weeks ago. The same week he'd been in the hospital with pneumonia, unconscious for 2 of those days. I stared at his name on that page for a long time. He hadn't signed it. He couldn't have. I brought the contract to Daniel with my hands shaking worse than his had. "This is dated the week you were in the hospital." He stared at it, signed slowly. "That's not my signature. Look, I always cross the S in cross. This one doesn't." I hadn't even noticed that detail. Small, deliberate, the kind of thing only a wife or a forger would catch. Someone's been signing your name. Bradley. His hands were flat, certain. It has to be Bradley. 2 days later, Margaret called an emergency family dinner. I should have known something was wrong the second I saw Patricia there too, sitting with a folder of her own. Ellie, Margaret's voice was ice wrapped in velvet. I think it's time we talked honestly about your intentions. My intentions? You married a vulnerable man, a man with a disability, no real business experience, isolated from his own family. Isolated by you, I cut in. Margaret's face didn't move. You've been going through private company files, inserting yourself into board meetings, turning my son against the family that raised him. I've been translating what he's actually saying, which apparently terrifies everyone at this table. Bradley leaned back, smug. Mom, maybe it's time we talked about competency evaluations, for Daniel's sake. Daniel's hands moved so fast I almost couldn't keep up interpreting them out loud for the room. You want to have me declared incompetent? After I built half this company from a desk you never let me sit at? Silence. Margaret finally leaned forward. You have no idea what I'm capable of protecting this family from, including you, Ellie. That night, Vivian showed up at our door unannounced, a banker's box in her arms. I've kept these for 6 years, she said, setting them on our kitchen table, waiting for someone who'd actually use them. Inside, years of financial statements, shell accounts, payments to consulting fees that led straight back to Bradley's personal accounts, wire transfers timed suspiciously close to every contract Daniel had approved while unconscious, traveling, or simply never in the room. Vivian looked at me, tired in a way that told me she'd been carrying this alone for a long time. The shareholder vote is in 2 weeks, she said. Margaret's going to try to remove Daniel from the board entirely, declare him unfit, push you out with a quiet divorce before anyone can ask questions. How do you know that? Because I heard her say it. Vivian's eyes were steady, word for word. The shareholder meeting was held in the top-floor conference room, glass walls looking over a harbor full of cross-logistics containers. Every board member was there. Margaret sat at the head like she already owned the vote. Before we begin regular business, Margaret said smoothly, I'd like to propose a motion. Given recent concerns about Daniel's capacity to fulfill his responsibilities as co-owner. Second, Bradley said instantly. Daniel's hand found mine under the table. I squeezed it once. Ready? I signed with my other hand. Ready, he signed back. Before you vote, I said, standing, I think the board should hear directly from Daniel, not through Grace, through me, translating exactly what he says, word for word, on the record. Margaret's smile tightened. This isn't necessary. It's his company too, I said. He gets a voice. A few board members exchanged glances. One older man, a longtime shareholder, nodded. Let him speak. Daniel stood. His hands moved with a steadiness I hadn't seen from him in months, and I spoke every word as it came. For 6 years, my reports were rewritten by an interpreter my brother paid to mistranslate what I said in this room. My signature has been forged on contracts while I was hospitalized. I have documentation. My aunt has documentation. My wife found the forged shipping contract herself. Gasps. Margaret's face went white. This is absurd, Bradley snapped, standing too fast, his chair scraping back. She's manipulated him, twisted things. The wire transfers say otherwise, Vivian said calmly, sliding copies down the table. Consulting fees, Bradley? To an account with your middle name on it? Bradley's composure cracked wide open. You don't understand what I've had to do to keep this company running while he sat there useless. He stopped. Too late. The room had heard every word. Useless, Daniel signed. And I said it flat, letting the silence do the rest of the work. Security was called. Not for me, not for Daniel, for Bradley, who tried to leave the building with a hard drive under his coat before the board's lawyer stopped him at the elevator. Margaret didn't move from her chair. She just stared at her son, at me, at the papers scattered across the table that 15 board members were now reading in dead silence. You have no idea what you've done, she said quietly. I think I do, I answered. I gave him back his voice. Bradley was arrested 3 days later. Wire fraud, forgery, embezzlement. The DA's office called it one of the cleanest paper trails they'd ever prosecuted, thanks to 6 years of records Vivian had quietly kept in a box under her bed. The board voted unanimously to remove Margaret from her seat. Not Daniel. Margaret. She lost her office, her title, her seat. At every table she'd built her entire identity around. The Cross family name hit the local business papers for a week straight. Not for shipping contracts, but for fraud, forgery, and the systemic silencing of a disabled heir by his own mother. She came to the house once, after all of it, stood on the porch in a coat that looked too big for her now. "I only ever wanted to protect this family," she said. Daniel signed, and I said it for him. "Steady. You wanted to protect yourself. There's a difference. I finally have a way to tell people that." She didn't have anything to say back. She just left. Daniel took full control of Cross Logistics 6 weeks later. First official act hiring me, not as his wife standing quietly beside him, but as his official interpreter and partner, my name added to the board's public roster. Grace was fired the same week. Her mistranslated reports entered as evidence in Bradley's case. Some nights, Daniel and I sit in his office. His office now. No locked drawers, no folders marked "Do not share." And he signed something he said to me more than once since the boardroom. "You're the first person who ever heard me. Not the money, not the name. Me." I used to think I was invisible. Turns out I just hadn't found the one person worth being seen by. And it cost his family everything they'd built on his silence.